Welcome to the Inbound Logistics Video Podcast series presented by Inbound Logistics Magazine. Today, we're going to be discussing some of the latest EPA regulations meant to curb emissions and pollutants from heavy-duty trucks and see how they might affect the shipping community and the supply chain sector overall. Our guest today is Michael Kucharski of JKC Trucking, and we're going to ask him if these regulations are a green win or a red flag. Here is our host, Amy Roach.
Great. Hi, Michael. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Excited to dive in and talk about this. Obviously, it's a very buzzworthy and important topic. But first, just give us a little background. Tell me about yourself and your company, JKC Trucking.
Yeah, JKC Trucking, we specialize in LTL product, which means less than truckload. And we go from the Midwest to the whole West Coast. We have 2 terminals in California. Just to give you an idea, we're a family business. You know, my father bought his first truck in '77. We have only almost 50 years of experience. You know, my father's pretty much dedicated all his life to delivering food and feeding the American people. The 2 terminals in California, we have one in Stockton in Northern California. We have one in Santa Fe Springs in Southern California. And what we do is we feed the American people every day and then try to keep the wheels rolling.
Great. So you're all over and you've been through it all. You've probably seen lots of ups and downs throughout the industry, and in a great place to talk about some of these regulations. And just before we get into kind of the nitty gritty, if you would, walk the audience through, the latest Environmental Protection Agency regulations. What are they? What are they specifying? And what do we need to know?
So yeah, the EPA is pushing for electronic vehicles, electronic trucks, and the big pusher is California. California actually has mandated these electronic trucks to come into their states. But this mandated, it's based on brand new technology. And just to give you guys an idea, I support green energy, but it's a little frustrating. And I don't agree with California. Furthermore, kind of sake of California keeps jamming these regulations down truckers' throats. California wants to force half its trucks to be electrified by 2035. You know what I mean? Which is great, but then we have some issues because these regulations, number one, are not practical. They're not practical for 5 reasons. Banning diesels is impractical and impossible currently right now, and pushing it too fast, it could be catastrophic for the supply chain.
Understood. Okay. Now you said 5 reasons, and you talked about diesel. Can you tell us what the other 4 are? I'm curious. It's a great way to kind of put a concise spin on it.
So yeah, number 1, costs. The cost of these green energy vehicles are astronomical. 2, infrastructure. Infrastructure is not there yet. And my biggest number 3 is testing and data. This is my biggest concern because these electronic trucks are being tested right now as we speak. They don't have all that. They're working the bugs out, which is kind of makes me very nervous. 4 is driving range. And then 5, there's going to be less payload capacity. And I could kind of go into each one if you like and give you a little bit more input.
Yeah, sure. Let's start with cost. Obviously, that's the first thing I think that sets everybody off. How do you see these regulations impacting cost for truckers across the supply chain, and then eventually, does that trickle down to consumers as well?
Yeah, the cost is it keeps me up at night, and I can't even imagine how it keeps truckers up in California. Just to give you an idea, 90% of the truckers in California are owner operators, small independent drivers, right? And the cost. A new clean diesel long haul tractor, right now typically costs in a range of $180,000 to $200,000. Right. They used to be a little bit less before COVID, but a comparable battery electric tractor costs upwards of $480,000. It's only a $300,000 upcharge. Is cost prohibitive for the overwhelming majority of motor carriers. Like I said, more than 95% of trucking companies are small businesses operating 10 trucks or fewer. Complying with these mandates will push many carriers out of business. Probably me too. And tighten capacity nationwide, causing severe price inflation of all goods.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's looming. You said 2030. I mean, that's really right around the corner. So how can the trucking company, starting now with the cost that you just mentioned, get to that huge gap in the cost between now and 2030? What are some truckers planning to do, if they want to stay in business in California?
I mean, That's a great question. I mean, these truckers are thinking, I mean, maybe this regulation will get pushed.
Hmm.
A lot of truckers has just left California and said they're not going to service California. And I don't blame them because, California, how's this? They have more regulations than the other states, and
Hmm.
they're, taking the lead on this. And how's this? I would support it if they could provide great data
Hmm.
saying that, look, this is the future and this is what we have to do. But that's not what they're doing. Speaking about, California, infrastructure is the next thing. So let's say we could get we have the money for these trucks, but the infrastructure in California or through the United States, the power grid is not ready. We don't have enough charging stations. Uh, Let me provide an example. My favorite example is Andrew Boyle of Boyle Transportation went to Washington to testify before before a Senate Environmental and Public Works Subcommittee on the future of clean vehicles. And he gave an example of only after one trucking company tried to just electrify 30 trucks here in Joliet, Illinois, which is not too far from here.
Hmm.
Local officials shut those plans down, saying that they would draw more electricity that is needed than the power of the whole city. That's only 30 electric trucks here in Illinois. And Illinois is a big state. California is a bit bigger. But so my question is, how we can't do this in Illinois? How are we going to charge these trucks in the state of California?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like you stay in California, you're going all, across the country. And so I'm assuming these regulations may follow suit as well. California has kind of been pushing this, but are you expecting to see these regulations in other states and, eventually nationally as well?
You mean it's a great question. So California is kind of like the, taking the lead on this, and other people are saying that, how's this? If California gets it through, there's going to be multiple states to follow.
Yeah.
But how about this? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and California could make this work. But if they fail, they're going to bring all the trucks that go to California, and we go to California a lot because, just to give you an idea, about 80 in the summertime, California produces about 80% of the produce for all of America. So California feeds the American people through the summer. And if we're forced on this technology, these electric trucks, my question is, how are they going to work in 110-degree weather, going through Death Valley? How do they work in an extreme cold? Lithium batteries are not great. Maybe they have some, the only way I see this happening is if there's going to be some kind of new technology where they come up with a super battery, something like that would like that was like drive the Terminator, you know what I mean? When you charge it up one time, we can make 8,000 miles. That would make me feel better, but I'm not seeing that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we covered costs. We talked about the infrastructure a little bit. What are some of the other ones? Go into detail a little further on some of the other ones that you mentioned.
So like I said, my biggest concern is the testing data. Example, how will these trucks work in the extreme cold? Just to give you an idea, to kill a battery or a lithium battery, any battery, you could kill it two ways, with extreme cold or extreme heat. So how is it going to do when it's minus 25 degrees in Montana? How will it work in high elevations? Because we have to go through high elevations. Right now, we're having these issues with our diesel trucks: the cold, the heat, the high elevation, the Las Vegas desert, Death Valley, etc. If this technology fails, the entire supply chain will be dead in the water. You know what I mean? And failure is not merely inconvenient; it's going to be catastrophic. It's not an option. It's not an option, especially for the food supply chain of America. The changes were made without checking with the supply chain or the truckers, and that's a really frustrating part about being caught in this situation, because I feel that we should all sit down together, the truckers and the lawmakers, to say, look, these are our problems, and come up with solutions together to keep the wheels rolling and the economy roaring for the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of that, like that top-down regulation where maybe the idea sounds good. And like you said, you fully support green energy. And I think that the shift to sustainability is sort of inevitable. But there is that disconnect, right? So if you're just saying, hey, this sounds like a great policy, but you're not checking with shippers and people who are actually on the road doing this, is that how you end up, kind of here with these regulations that kind of don't work in reality?
Correct. And I mean, I was just, the motor carrier and the EPA has pushed multiple regulations. Like I said, we're over regulated, and when you push a regulation too fast, it causes issue. Let me give you an example. When the California said that we need to have the particular filters to catch the carbon that the diesel trucks give out, and kind of burns it up, so there'd be less carbon in the air. They push the technology so fast, and what the problem is, anytime you have this problem with the system, it derates your truck to 5 miles an hour. You have to be towed off the highway. It actually causes more hazards because your truck gets derated. You try to get off the highway. You have to go to a dealer, and the dealer has to fix the system, reset everything. And the frustrating part is that we're hauling perishables and food. Time is money. There's been multiple times we'll go to the dealer, and the dealer can't even fix the truck because they don't know what's wrong. So they start replacing parts. There's been situations the dealer wants to replace the engine. I'm like, what? That's not going to fix it. We need to find the cause. And when we're stuck with something like that, this causes, extra cost for us, because then I have to send another truck to take that load and recover it and deliver it, continue, especially if it's produce. Produce is very perishable.
Yeah.
Second, you harvest produce, it's rotting. So if I'm stuck on the road, when I get to the grocery store or distribution center, that's that much less that produce has life, and that much it's less for the consumer, and that's not good.
No.
In my opinion, for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention that obviously in the food industry, we are already stuck with, greatly increased costs from inflation. Food costs are through the roof. So if it's costing the truckers more money to do this, and it ends up, in the consumer's pockets, no one's going to be happy, right?
Yeah. And then one thing that we learned from COVID is that, the supply chain has a safety stock, but the safety stock is super razor thin, because the model was always just in time. You don't keep inventory. And I know that, some salesmen will get bonuses for keeping the inventory low. But that had a tremendous impact, especially when we had COVID, because people, number one, ran and bought it all up when they panic buyed, where they panic buying the food, and then they couldn't, most of the food they had to throw out. But then it took us forever to, fill that void and then catch up with that supply chain, which I hope, as the American people, we learn by our mistakes, and we say, hey, you know what, we need to have a little bit, more in a safety stock than something that will hold us over for 1 or 2 days. We need to have some more just in case, bad weather, economic condition, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. So where do we go from here? Do you see a better way to balance between, moving to more sustainable energy models while still keeping the needs of the transportation industry front and center? And how do we get there?
Amy, so what we need is a call to action. This technology is being pushed through way too fast with little testing and data. And the truckers really, I think, need an affordable hybrid truck. Right now we have diesel trucks. As soon as a diesel truck breaks, we're dead in the water, right? I would love to have some other system, like if one system goes down, that we could limp it back to the next big city, maybe next terminal. And that's why we need a truck with two systems of power. If one shuts down or breaks, the other one continues. And I would love to see trucks maybe with 3 systems of power, because the way I see it, if we move from the current technology we have, my opinion, we should be moving something to better and greater, and something that everybody would want to go to. And having an affordable hybrid truck would definitely be a win-win for the truckers and for the supply chain. And it would, how's this? Definitely for the American people.
Yeah, that multiple system approach seems to make a lot of sense to me. Is that something that's sort of actively gaining some traction in the industry, or are you the only one who's talking about it right now?
So there is a little bit of talk about it. Nikola has made a truck, and I did sign up to get some Nikola trucks. But when they started making trucks, they said they're going to have, their first truck was going to be a compressed gas truck that would run a generator, and the generator would charge the lithium batteries, right? And then they said they're going to move to a hydrogen generator, which is going to be better than and I support the hydrogen generator, even though I haven't seen one, but I hear great things. Better than the natural gas. And so how's this? So if the batteries go dead, we could kick in the hydrogen generator, we could charge it and go from there. Hydrogen generator goes down. Hopefully we can make it with the batteries. That's the only truck I've seen like this. But with this huge push for electric trucks, Nikola kind of has pushed that aside because Nikola, the first trucks they're doing right now, and obviously there's a lot of change at the company, is they're making EV trucks, perfect electric, just straight electric trucks, because everybody's kind of trying to get to the finish line, who could get there first.
Yeah.
And that's not right. I mean, I think if we have to wait to design a better product, I think that would be great and beneficial for the people, instead of pushing this technology through that's going to cause issues.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people in our audience who are going to agree with you and feel the same way. Any other pointers or any other advice you'd want to share with other trucking companies who are trying to figure out, what to do here, or any other, predictions on what's going to come down next from the
One thing I always like to quote is Todd Spencer, and Todd Spencer is the president of OIDA, the Owner Operator Independent Driver Association, and he has this amazing quote, and I love to quote it, and it says, if you're talking about something that actually really does deliver benefits for all around, you don't have to mandate stuff like this. People gravitate to it. They go after it and say, I want it because it makes everything better. So when we move this technology, I think that's what we should be gravitating to it. And one thing I want to say is I tip my hat to Todd Spencer, president of OIDA, because he's the tip of the spear representing all the owner operators, and God bless this man. And I want to thank him for all he does for the trucking community and truckers.
Great. Makes a lot of sense. Well, again, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. I think you gave us a lot of really great information here. Lots going on, lots to think about, and we'll have to see what happens next.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for all your support.
Thanks so much.
Thank you to Michael Kucharski and JKC Trucking for all of that great information. And thank you for watching this Inbound Logistics video podcast. For more episodes, go to www.inboundlogistics.com/podcast.